Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Office Hours Career Paths for PhDs. My name is Dr. Jasmin Goodman, and we have yet another exciting interview planned for you all today. I am eager to welcome Dr. Maurice Washington to the stage. He received his PhD in Agricultural and Biosystems Engineering from Iowa State University. Dr. Washington, how are you?
I'm doing good. How's it going?
Great. Thank you so much for joining me today. So I just want to be able to just jump right in. So it's not often, I just shared this with you earlier. So it's not often that we see Black men with PhDs. We know they're out there, but we haven't really seen them highlighted on different forums. So I'm excited to have you here as our second Black man that we've interviewed with the PhD. So just kind of talk to me. So you were a student at North Carolina A&T.
Mm-hmm.
What prompted you to pursue the PhD?
Okay, so when I first went to A&T, I was actually an architectural engineer student, but I switched over to agricultural engineering. The way the programs were set up, we were all under like the same umbrella for our foundational courses.
Mhm.
So one day I was just talking to Dr. Gale, who was my mentor still to this day, over in the ag engineering department. He was telling me like you will be working with your hands, be dealing with soil and water, things of that nature. So that interested me. I actually made this switch over to agricultural or biological engineering from architectural engineering. At the time, I just felt like architectural engineers kind of came a dime a dozen, so to speak. And there weren't a lot of folks, a lot of African Americans in agricultural engineering. I know you said I was architectural. I'm actually an agricultural engineer, but
Agriculture.
yeah.
Okay.
But talking to Dr. Gale and talking to a few other students over in an apartment kind of made me switch to agricultural engineering. So at A&T in the program, uh, graduated 2009. That was the time of the economic downturn. So I was like, I can go on the job market or I can go get my master's. I was like, well, if I go get my master's, I'll probably be a bit more marketable, have more knowledge base. So I was like, you know what? Let me just go to let me just go get my master's in ag engineering. So my department head at A&T, Dr. Shabazi, he was actually an alumni of Penn State University.
Okay.
So met some folks up at Penn State, did a visit, and they paid for it. I was like, I'm gonna go, So ended up going to Penn State, uh, and I did some research on like antibiotics and composting and trying to get rid of or lower the level of the antibiotics before land application because there's a lot of antibiotic resistance uh, right now or currently. So did that work. And at Penn State, they was like, hey, do you want to do your PhD? I was like, sure. So all I did was sign a piece of paper and I was basically in the PhD program. They had a scholarship program called the Bud and Waller Scholars Program, I believe. So I was initially in that program while I was still finishing up my master's degree, but I started taking one or two courses towards my PhD. But then I talked to my PhD advisor at Penn State, Dr. Hamlet, who was from Iowa, and he actually went to Iowa State. So I was just talking to him about Iowa State, and I happened to go down to A&T that same year to do a graduate recruitment fair. I was
Okay.
like, okay, I'm here at Penn State. I'm in the PhD program to sign the paper, whatever. So let me go just shop around, see what's going on. So I went to the Iowa State table, and uh, there was another Aggie at the table, Dr. Derek Cobble, who is a professor in animal science at A&T right now. So
Mhm.
we was, chatting it up, talking about Iowa State. So, I filled out my little information card, submitted it, didn't think anything else about it. Then I got a phone call from my PI, my co-PI, Dr. Michelle Sapir, in the Ag and Biosystems Engineering Department at Iowa State. So She asked me if I wanted to visit, if I was still interested. I said yes. So I went out there. It was cold. Never been to Iowa. I mean, who goes to Iowa? You know.
No
So
offense to those who are from Iowa that are watching, but that's his
uh,
experience. Okay.
it is what it is. But went to visit the campus, and they offered, and you know wrote my statement, and everything, and what I did and what I tell other students. I was like, when you're looking at PWIs, they usually have some type of DEI mission statement, whatever they have. So I looked at that statement, wherever their 5 to 10 year plan was. I was like, okay, I can use this in my statement. How can I meet this goal, or how can I help them achieve this? So I did that. Got the offer to go to Iowa State, and actually I was co-advised. My co-advisor was Dr. Tom Mormon. He worked for USDA ARS, which is the Ag Research Service. So he and Dr. Sapir were my co-advisors. So that's what really, I guess, got my attention to go to Iowa State, because I had the ability to work in a USDA lab. So after I graduated, I see Penn State with my master's officially like August 2020.
Mhm.
Probably the next day, hit the road with my car in a U-Haul with my mother, and we traveled all the way, to Ames, Iowa, and I was at Iowa State. So
What was that experience like? So, master's to PhD, that can be a big leap, especially if you're at different institutions. So, what
mhm.
was your experience like in your doctoral program?
So even before that, going from North Carolina A&T, which is HBCU, going to Penn State, which is a large Research One institution, it was a it was a bit of a shock, because just like 40,000 students last time I checked at University Park, about 10,000 maybe graduate students. So just the adjustment to being in a larger university or predominant white institution, and uh, it didn't really have that maternal environment like A&T did. Like, for instance, my mentor at A&T, like, he would get on me about certain stuff. They don't care about that at Penn State,
Yeah.
or larger schools like that. Like, don't get me wrong, there were one thing I did like about Penn State, there was a multicultural director
Mm.
in each college. Uh, and the multicultural director, her name is Dr. Randy Cogleton now. She has a PhD now, but she helped me out big time. And there was a big HBCU community at Penn State.
Okay.
So there were a lot of students from Alcorn State, Jackson State, and then a couple from A&T. So we had that community, but it was still an adjustment period. But I felt like A&T prepared me big time for Penn State. Like, I had research experience being at A&T, but it was another level at Penn State, just with the amount of resources that they had. Uh, so that was a benefit. And then just meeting different faculty members, like one of the administration people. They actually went to A&T back in the day, like in the 70s. Dr. Blaney Bowen, and he was friends with my advisor, uh, or my mentor, Dr. Gale. So I did have that connection. Then I had some other connections at Penn State that kind of helped me through the program. But at Penn State, I really learned about what battles to fight
Mm.
when it comes to your academic career. And I learned that from one of the deans in the graduate college. So I had those tools. I always say that the master's program is like a proving ground. It prepares you if you want to go for the PhD. It kind of gives you a sample of what that might be. So when I went to Iowa State, I was kind of like already prepped and ready for, what to expect, because I had been to Penn State. I had participated in the Black Graduate Student Association and all that stuff, uh, and had done some research. So I kind of knew what to expect and how to balance the classes with your research and the grading system. Because when I was at A&T, we didn't have the plus minus system. Like, an
Oh
A was
yeah.
an A, a B
Mhm.
was a B. So
Mm-hmm.
that took a little adjustment time for me. But when I made it to Iowa State, I was kind of like, okay, I know what to do. Not saying everything went perfect because it didn't, but yeah, it was a smoother road, so to speak, at Iowa State. But Iowa State didn't have the diversity that Penn State has, because Penn State, you got Philly, you got Pittsburgh, you got
Yeah.
DC, you got the tri-state areas right there.
Mm-hmm.
Iowa State was a totally different beast, even weather-wise.
Okay.
Very flat, very windy, blizzard conditions, uh, snow. Just because it snows doesn't mean you're not going to class. Like, they might have delayed class one time when I was there. So you have to learn to navigate through the buildings,
Mm-hmm.
to stay warm to get to where where you needed to be. But just Iowa State culturally was a different beast, so to speak.
Okay.
Yeah, it was just different. Yeah.
Now, when you went into the program,
hmm
what were you wanting to pursue in terms of your career?
Uh, that's a good question. To be honest, I don't know. Like, I was
Okay.
like, hey, like, I didn't know because my mentor, Dr. Gale, was like the first African American to get his PhD in ag engineering from NC State. So I was
Okay.
like, okay, I'm gonna do this master's. I was like, okay. He inspired me to get my PhD. So I was like,
Mhm.
okay, with a PhD, it can pigeonhole you. But at the time, I was like, okay, I'm going to go in, I'm going to get my PhD in ag and biosystems engineering. Maybe apply for a government gig, with maybe USDA or something like that, or maybe a consulting firm or anything like that. And then initially, I was actually trying to do a double kind of major program, so PhD in ag engineering and PhD in
Ooh,
environmental sciences, but that did not
see
occur.
my face. When y'all see my
Yeah,
face, I'm like a double
no,
what? Okay.
yeah, that didn't occur because there was a lot of overlap with some of the coursework. So I was like, okay, I can do that. It can make me more marketable, but as things went on, I was like, nah, let me just cut my losses and focus on one thing. So that's
Yeah.
what I did. Yeah.
Okay. At what point did your career goal begin to take shape?
Probably got to Iowa State in 2012, summer 2012. So I'm taking courses. Uh, I'm doing research on antibiotics again.
Mhm.
Uh, so maybe once I got more into my research
Oh.
and I started going to different conferences,
Mhm.
uh, you would meet people from different government agencies like USGS. Oh, Maurice, we like the research. We like what you're doing. Come, check us out and different things like that. So my research kind of, uh, kind of like scope kind of the things I was looking at job wise.
Okay.
So again, it was more like, okay, I'm working, I'm doing water quality sampling, I'm doing sediment sampling, I'm doing manure sampling, I'm doing physiochemical lab experiments, looking at half life, looking at the fate of antibiotics and of the pesticides, looking
Mhm.
at how they absorb, desorb from different soils, looking at how to extract them from the soils and manure and things like that. So I'm getting all this lab experience. So I'm like, hey, you know, I'm working in a USDA lab, so hey, I can probably apply for some USDA jobs. I could again maybe go into the private sector, uh, or maybe some type of administrative nonprofit program where they're looking at environmental stuff. So that was kind of my focus,
Okay.
uh, and I would say probably 20. I graduated in 2017, so 2016. I'm trying to finish up. I'm trying to do this. I'm trying to do that. I'm trying to be active on campus because you need to have that balance. So one thing I did was I started this Black and Brown Men's Empowerment Symposium,
Okay.
because when I know this is a little off topic,
No,
but
no. Yeah. Go ahead.
when I was on campus, some of my other colleagues who were Black male PhDs, we saw a disconnect between the African American undergrads and then the graduate undergrads. Maybe
Mm,
maybe it was generational, but there was a disconnect that we saw. Like for instance, let's say we're walking on campus, and, we get like a head nod, what's up? They might not say anything, or they might act like they don't see us. So then
what's the code?
we would show up to their undergraduate Black organization meetings, and and point out like, hey, we're a community. Like you might be going through something, but if we acknowledge you, acknowledge us, because it's not a lot of us here.
Right.
Uh, I was probably I was one of three African Americans in my program.
Wow.
One of three. So it wasn't a lot of us in my department. Period. So like we need to be community. We need to help each other out. So I was like, you know what? Let me try to put together a symposium to try to give the Black male students tools that they'll need to not only just get to Iowa State, but how can you stay here? Because you do, a lot of these PWIs recruit, but they're not retaining.
Yeah.
So I did that symposium, had like a seminar on like financial literacy and different
Mm,
things like that. So I was trying to have a balance of taking care of my classwork, doing research, but also giving back. Because a lot of us we're so tunnel vision, tunnel vision, tunnel vision,
yeah.
but you have to be able to give back and help others, you know, get to the school, but also leave with what you came here to get, which was your degree.
Yeah.
So that was a couple of things. Some of the things I was doing while I was on campus. So
No, that's awesome. And so, with you being intentional about reaching out to undergraduates, had you thought about staying in the academy at all?
no, no,
Why not?
no, 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 no,
You might
no,
be the first person that said nah.
never. Because I never, to be blunt, the academy wasn't built for us.
Mm,
It
okay.
just it just wasn't built for us. So uh, just with that in mind, just interactions uh, with faculty, with administration, because we had a lot of stuff go down at Iowa State, and just a lot
Okay.
of stuff. Like we were
Okay.
protesting, and
Oh, okay. Got it.
and even like, and my advisor said, Maurice, you're a good teacher. Like I always say that doing research is teaching,
Mm,
because I always had like undergrads to help me like process samples. So I'm actually showing them how to do the extractions, how to sample properly the samples in the field and stuff like that. So I'm teaching. I like teaching. That's not an issue. It's
mm,
just the research component. It just wasn't for me. I'm more of a application type of person. But
mm. Okay.
when you look at PWIs and you look at HBCUs, always call it a brain drain.
Okay. Let's get into
So you have a lot of faculty members. There might be some type of MOU between like a PWI, and that faculty member is going to the PWI, you know,
it. Okay.
training, getting some additional training, but that PWI faculty member is not going back to the HBCU to do the same thing.
Got it.
Or if you think about it, most HBCUs, and this is an equity thing and not having duplicate programs depending on what state you're in, they don't have those advanced degrees. If A&T had a master's in ag engineering when I was there, I would have stayed at A&T.
Got it.
So you have students that leave A&T or HBCU, go to a PWI for their master's or PhD, and then that's it.
Okay.
So one of my ultimate goals is eventually I want to go back to A&T to
I was going
teach.
to ask. Okay.
Yeah,
So,
I
is it
do.
your plan? Okay. Okay.
Eventually, but there, HBCUs, we have our issues, in regards to uh, pay, as far as faculty members and things like that.
Mhm.
But I've always been critical of the brain drain that happens at HBCUs, and that inhibits, I think, some of our programs. Like A&T was the first HBCU to be accredited with an ag engineering program. FAMU was the second.
Okay.
My program at A&T, we graduate a lot of PhDs. So I'm always fighting that. Hey, we need to give back. So I do that by recruiting. Uh, you know, you know, sending out different internship opportunities and stuff like that. But I'm very critical of the brain drain. But to get back to academia is not for me. If I could be an adjunct right now, I care more about the teaching and then than the research.
Yeah.
Uh, so in agriculture, we have something called ag extension, where you're more applying the skill sets to actually do stuff in the field and things of that nature. So I would probably be more ag extension, doing more applicable work than uh, theoretical research, so to speak. But academia is just it's a business. It's politics,
Mhm.
and I'm a straight shooter, so I really don't.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
I guess I haven't built my effective communication
Yeah.
skills in the academic realm to kind of deal with that because it's a
Yeah.
lot right now. So
Yeah, there's a
yes,
lot that goes on. Academia is already political anyway, and
mm,
then if you're at an institution that culturally is not, if you're not, if your culture isn't a part of the mainstream within that institution, there can be so many other issues. So I hate that because I feel like students can learn so much from scholars or from applied scholars who are also teaching because you're on the front lines doing the work. So hopefully you will get back to A&T one day. We won't see any reports about you knucking and bucking down there.
no, 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 no.
No. Okay. So once you defend your dissertation, what's next for you?
Oof. And this is like 6 years ago, so I'm trying to remember. Let's see. I defended my dissertation, and my friends joke about it, but they were like, Maurice, your dissertation defense was so long. And it was long because I had like three projects, and I'm not a I'm not an expert in statistics.
Hmm.
So I actually had a statistician on my committee. So
Okay.
typically we have one, two, three. Typically we have five committee members. I had six.
Okay.
So I had a statistician. I was like, I need the help.
Uh-huh.
So part of my research in water quality, let me give you an example. Sometimes you collect a sample, you analyze the sample, and you get a measurement of a non-detect or let's say it's a non-detect.
Hmm.
So what do you do with that data point? So you usually get a non-detect because your analytical equipment might not be uh, sensitive enough
Okay.
to detect what's in there.
Hmm.
Because if nothing was in there, it would say zero, but
Hmm.
it's saying a non-detect. So how do we deal with that statistically? So I worked with the statistician. We came up with a method uh, to deal with these censored data points because if you have all those censored data points and you don't analyze them correctly, it's going to skew your statistics. So I broke it down so anybody could understand my statistical analysis. So that's why it took me a little bit longer. But they
Hmm.
were like, Maurice, we understand how to deal with censored data points now and things like that. So after I got out and they said that I passed, I cried because I mean it's a lot to deal with. So
Yeah.
uh, then after that, you have your corrections you have to make.
Hmm.
Uh, and by this time, I'm running on fumes. Like I'm sitting in my apartment, waking up, just edits,
Yeah.
getting everything together. So did the edits and everything, and there was an agricultural engineering consulting firm in the DC area. Uh, so I was in talks with them, and they wanted me to come out and do a talk. So flew home, did the talk with them, presented my research because I was applying for a position because I was working with antibiotics and pesticides, and they needed someone in that particular position. So I did the interview. I thought it went well, but nothing,
Okay. Did
nothing.
they ghost you or you just didn't get the job?
I don't think they ghosted me, and
Okay,
this is
that's
a
a little bit
while
different.
ago.
Oh,
Oh
okay.
no, I have stories about that too. But
Oh, ghosting. Oh.
but yeah, I didn't get it, so I was like, man. So then I pack up all my stuff and I go home. I go back to Maryland, and so that was I made it back home like July 2017. So from July 2017 to December 2017, I'm applying for jobs like crazy. Uh, I'm changing my resume around. I'm changing my CV around. I'm doing different cover letters. Uh, I applied to so many different jobs, and it really pissed me off because there doesn't seem to be customer service anymore or just good communication because
Mhm.
I would apply for a job maybe a month or two, and you kind of get a feeling. I call the specific company or whatever, uh, and they'll be like, we're still considering. And then I go back, oh, we've gone with another. Like, don't waste my time. Just let me know. I think I probably applied to over 30 or 40 different positions. And the issue is, as a PhD, you're kind of pigeonholed because you have a certain expertise.
Got it.
So when you're applying with certain jobs, they're like, oh, it's a PhD. Uh, you're probably not going to want to pay this person that much, or their expertise might be too specific. So that's why I was changing around my resume to try to fit for what they were looking for.
Hmm.
Uh, and I was unsuccessful. I was like, man, I got to pay the bills. I got to do something.
Hmm.
So I became a substitute teacher
Yeah.
for PG County schools. Um, and I was doing math and science. So I think I was at two or three schools, and I did that for a while. That was a culture shock. Just
Wait, so I want to jump in here. So mentally, what was happening with you at that time? So
oof,
you defended, you have this long defense, you get it done, you make the edits, you are applying for all the jobs. Where were you mentally at this point?
I mean, I didn't have anything left in the tank after the PhD. They always say that you come out different from in which you came in, and that could be a negative or a positive thing.
Mhm.
For me, I think it made me more resilient to a certain point, but at the same time, when you get denied, it's like, man, like what's going on? What am I going to do?
Right.
Uh, so I was like, hey, I got bills to pay. Like, I got to do something. So, like I said, I was a substitute teacher.
Mhm.
I taught math, and which really helped me out because I'm teaching like algebra. So it's like I haven't touched this in a long time. So I'm relearning, it, and I'm able to, help the students out and things of that nature. Uh, so I think I applied to be a substitute teacher in December.
Mhm.
Uh, and before that, I applied for a position. I was like, you know what? Let me just look at instead of looking at federal positions because USA jobs. That's
I've heard
yeah.
it can
So
be a
I was like,
nightmare.
yeah. So I was like, let me look at different state municipalities and different state government jobs. I was like, let me look at California. Like, I don't ever see myself in California. You got the wildfires, you got the
Mhm.
smog, you got the drought. I said, okay, let me apply. So I applied to a position for the State Water Resource Control Board, which is under the California EPA.
Mhm.
There was two positions. I think one was in Oakland and one was in Sonoma. I applied to the one in Sonoma County, and then I had to like take a test to see where I ranked, to see if I qualified for uh, applying for that particular job. It was a water resource control engineer position.
Mhm.
So did a test, passed, whatever. Didn't think anything about it. So substitute teacher. I catch the flu. I haven't been around kids like that, so I'm out for like 3 or 4 weeks. I
Mhm.
mean, I have no insurance,
Uh,
because when you're a PhD student in grad school, you have insurance.
yeah.
Uh, I have no insurance. I'm paying out of pocket to get medicine, and it was a bad. I was down and out, like just physically. Mentally, I was okay, but just being hit by the flu was, ugh, yeah.
But see,
So,
and if I could just jump in here
mhm,
quickly, because that has to be frustrating that you pursued the PhD initially to have better job outcomes, only to
mhm.
graduate and not have the job outcomes right away. What were some of the conversations like with your mentors at that time?
To be honest, I don't remember reaching out to him like that. I just don't.
Okay.
I just remember just applying. Now there were a few positions that I did apply for that I asked for recommendations, and they did that,
Okay.
but I didn't sit down and just have a comment like, "Hey, I need help," because I figured like they've given me all the tools that I need. So
Uh, okay.
just rely on those skills. And if I need to reach out, they were available. But I just figured, hey, I'll figure it out. Because
Good.
it's not like you get your PhD. Oh, you have 10 job offers, and oh, you pick what you want. And no, there's a limited amount of positions, even especially in academia,
Right.
when you
Yeah.
have your PhD. So imagine going into the private sector or, state or local government with a PhD. It's a bit different. Uh, so teaching, get sick, dealing with that, dealing with uh, a different generation of kids.
Mhm.
So that
Mhm.
was interesting. So come March, April, May of 2018. No, April, late April, I believe. I get a phone call like, "Hey, Maurice, we want to interview you for the water resource control engineer job in Sonoma County." It's like, okay, finally, perfect.
Uh-huh.
So, so I interview. They like everything. They offer me the job in May. June 3rd, June 4th was the start day, I think.
Mhm.
I got on a plane. Well, first I had to find an apartment. So I had to find an apartment. I got on a plane with a pillow, a blanket, and 2 bags. And I got there that Sunday. The job started on that Monday.
Wow, that's fast. So you went from not hearing back, interview, offer, plane, first day. Like that's okay. Okay.
Yeah,
Now, what about that? What were your first couple of weeks like in that job?
so I was the only African American
Okay.
in the office. It was actually okay for me. It was just more adjusting to California itself because
Okay.
I didn't think I'd ever be out here.
Hmm.
Uh, so that was more of an adjustment, and then getting more of my stuff out here because I was like I just hit it. Like I was like, hey, this is this is an opportunity, and nothing else is biting. You have to do what you have to do. So that's why I hopped on a plane and got there. And there was like, and with these sometimes with these state jobs, there was no negotiation. I don't remember what my initial salary was, but it was decent.
Hmm.
But again, I came out here and it's California. California is expensive, but uh, my first couple of weeks were good. I mean, I didn't have any issues at all. It was just, your standard onboarding process, you know, your tax information and different stuff like that. So, it was pretty good. So, I worked for uh, the State Water Resource Control Board for one of their local water boards. I worked for the North Coast Regional Water Quality Control Board as a water resource control engineer in the cannabis regulatory department.
So tell me, what does that work entail? What's your role? How do all of
Mhm.
these things work together?
Yeah, so I have the agricultural background, the water resource background. So the whole premise of that position is in California, growing marijuana is legal. But what and the area I was in, or I'm in now still, like Sonoma County, Mendocino County, Humboldt County, uh, in that area is called the Green Triangle. Like it's known for growing marijuana.
Oh,
So if you were legally growing, you have to get different state permits. One of the permits was from the water board. So we were basically making sure that they weren't polluting the waterways
mm,
when they were growing uh, marijuana, so they weren't using any illegal pesticides or
Okay.
anything like that. They weren't moving a lot of sediment in soil, and that wasn't being discharged into our waterways. So that was the premise of their job. So if they wanted to do any in-stream work, they had to apply for a 401 permit. There was different site management plans that I had to review. So I was able to get a lot of regulatory experience dealing with the state, because if you do anything in the state of California involving water, for the most part, you have to deal with the water board. So I was
Okay.
able to accumulate that regulatory experience, which was big time. I was able to talk to different stakeholders, whether it was private, whether it was county level, state level, or the federal level within my job. So I enjoyed it. I learned a lot, but it was good. And I also had the opportunity to work on other agricultural projects. So I was able to use my skill set a bit more than normal, working on a couple of different agricultural projects in the North Coast region. So yeah.
Okay. And so I saw in your bio that you also spent time as an agricultural technical consultant. Tell me
Yeah.
about that work. Was that you
So
in a consulting role as in freelance, or that was your title for a company?
it was a title for a company. So after the water board, I was looking for more experience. I was looking for specifically more agricultural experience. So
Mhm.
I work for a company called Layden USA. They are an R&D tax credit company. So basically, if you're doing any R&D, whatever, and there's certain expenses that you have, you can recoup that with what we call the R&D tax credit. And if I remember correctly, the R&D tax credit was basically an incentive from the government to increase manufacturing and research here abroad. So I was an ag tech consultant, so I would work with all the agricultural uh, customers. So if they were in cannabis, if they were maybe doing in an analytical lab doing some ag stuff, I would talk to them about what we offered and what we could offer them, and kind of break it down on the ag side so they understood, and also that my colleagues understood as well.
Okay. Now that brings us to your current role. Tell us
Hmm.
just more about the work that you're doing today. And I don't want to mispronounce the family estate's
Okay.
names.
Okay, so I am the agricultural water resource engineer for Trinchero Family Estates. Trinchero Family Estates is the second largest family-owned winery in the world.
Mhm.
Uh, so some of our brands: Sutter Home, Menage a Trois, Ziada, uh, T&V. It's like over 50 something brands.
So for everyone
So
that's watching, you see his background makes more sense now. So this is not just him at some office job, completely unrelated. This is all attached to the work that he does today. So tell us more about just a day in the life of
okay.
your current role.
So that regulatory experience that I got with the water board comes in handy because we deal with the water board. So uh, I work in the vineyard department, so I do a lot of our annual reporting for water use. So out in California, or yeah, in California, the water laws are a lot different than back east. So you either have what we call a riparian right or a procreative right. So that right tells you when you can pump the water, use the water, so your diversion season, and it tells you how much water on that water right you're able to use in a season. So I help with all the annual water reporting. I help with our telemetry that we have on our flow meters to measure our water use. So I make sure that is working correctly and we're getting the data in real time. I also help maintain our vineyard water infrastructure. So our wells, our flow meters, our telemetry, our reservoirs. Uh, and then I help with any type of ag engineering, soil water engineering, anything with my foundational skill set in
Mhm.
ag that I can use to help the vineyard department. That's what I do. And it's funny because I was looking to pivot. I would walk outside and see a vineyard there, see a vineyard there. I was like, I don't have viticulture experience or vineyard experience, but I have that foundational knowledge base. So I actually attended a virtual job fair called Be the Change Job Fair, and it's a job fair for people of color who are interested in the beverage industry.
Oh,
So I did that job fair, and I actually uh, talked to Trinchero Family Estates, and I talked to Constellation, which is another big company, and then also talked to E&J Gallo. At Constellation,
mhm.
if I remember correctly, had a real good conversation with him. The guy wanted me to apply for a vineyard manager position. I'm
Mhm.
like, I'm not comfortable with that. I don't. Mm-mm. So, talking to Trinchero Family Estates, told them what I was looking for, where I could help them out, and they actually made this position for me. Uh,
Nice.
they made the position for me. So, like I said, I help with a lot of the regulatory, a lot of the irrigation stuff we do out here, water conservation, all anything related to ag water and the vineyards. That's what I work on, and that's what I do.
Now, thinking back to when you were a student at A&T, would you have ever imagined yourself doing the type of work that you're doing now?
Uh, I couldn't even think that far in the future, to be honest. I was just focused on those classes,
Uh-huh.
trying to make it
Mhm.
to the next semester. But I knew it would be something related to agriculture. I didn't know it would be the wine industry. So,
And I'm even curious, what piqued your interest initially about agriculture? Because initially I'm thinking like maybe he's from the deep south and grew up on a farm or something like that. So how did you get into this as a career interest outside of that initial conversation with your mentor?
well, my family is from like southern Virginia, so to speak,
Okay.
just south of Richmond and
Okay.
Petersburg, Dinwiddie County. But we have a homestead there. But I mean, we weren't farming happened a long time ago, like tobacco farming. But
Hmm.
but just talking to my mentor, Dr. Gale, he was saying that you would be doing water, working with your hands and soil and water, and that interested me.
Okay.
Just that right there did it for me. It was more interesting than the architectural engineering stuff that I was learning about.
Got it.
So.
Now, if you could go back and give yourself advice just from any stage of
Mm.
your academic journey or career journey, what advice would you give a young
Mm.
pre-Dr. Maurice Washington?
Uh, don't be so set in your ways. Uh, you belong.
Mm,
Try to get as many certifications that you can on their dime. Uh, let's see. Just go do it. Like just take care of business. Uh,
okay.
yeah, just
Now, any advice for young men who are wanting to potentially follow in your footsteps? What are some maybe academic things that you did to prepare yourself for the either the graduate work or the work that you're doing now?
so you never stop learning. You're always like I was looking up something today just to stay up with the times. Always learn. Always network. Don't be afraid to ask for help if you don't know something. Uh, as an undergraduate student, like I failed several classes. I did.
Okay, let's get into it. We fail classes. We
Yes, I
want to hear these
failed.
stories. We don't want to hear we want to get
Yeah,
down into the nitty gritty.
I
Okay.
failed Cal one, calculus one, physics one, uh, maybe Cal two. I had to retake them, but like my mother told me, like no one said college was going to be easy.
Mm,
You know, so if this, if you want to be an engineer, certain classes you got to pass, certain things you got to do. So
right.
you know, sit in the library, ask for help. I remember after I failed calculus one, I retook it, and I was sitting in the professor's office asking for help. Like it was always ingrained in us by my mother. You get the grade you earned.
Hmm.
So you have to show effort. You
Yeah.
have to show that you're willing to ask questions and that you really want it, because no one's going to give you anything.
Yeah.
No one's going to give you anything. You have to want it for yourself. Wherever you want to be, you have to do what you have to do to get there. So uh, that was the biggest thing, was not giving up and persevering,
Hmm.
doing what I had to do to pass those classes and get to where I am now. And like, I wasn't a fan of my foundational courses, but I love my major courses. So the soil and water engineering, soil physics, and stuff like that. So when you look at my resume for undergrad, I had two GPAs. I had my cumulative, which was a bit lower, but my major GPA was
Okay.
higher because
Okay.
I cared more about those major classes. Not care, but they had my interest more. They were more interesting than the foundational courses. But you need those foundational courses
Mhm.
to do good in those major classes. So
Yeah. And I think that's important too when you talk about getting the help that you need. So I taught higher ed now, I think it's going on 11 years. And
hmm
I'm always surprised at the number of students that won't come by office hours, that will be struggling. And I'll even, I'm HBCU through and through. So I'm like, hey, you owe me an assignment. What's going on? And, they're just, some students aren't that responsive. And so I try to tell them, I'm not here to stop you. I'm here to challenge you, but I'm here as your ally. And so, what you just said there about making sure that you get the help that you need, I hope that everyone that listens to this really takes hold of that, because most professors are there to help you and to
hmm
challenge you. Now, there are some that, their goal is to stop you, but you have to keep your goal in mind, and you have to keep, that vision before you, instead of, buckling to the pressure of the
hmm
work, or if you don't pass a class, and using that as a reason why you shouldn't pursue it, when a lot of times you have to just push through.
And don't get me wrong, there are certain classes designed to filter you out. That's just
Okay.
how it is.
Hmm.
You know, that's how it is.
Okay.
And what I tell students now is that, just think about this. College is a business, right? So you pay your money, all right, and let's say something happens and you drop out. Do they give you a refund? No, they do not.
Mm-mm.
So since college is a business, you need to treat yourself as a business person. So all your decisions should be business like. Now, in undergrad, did I go to someone else's homecoming and I had a quiz the next day? I found out later. Yes, you have to, you got to make, the right decisions. You have to treat yourself as a business person,
Mhm.
because, like I said, you pay your money, you want to get your money's worth, because they're going to get paid regardless
Yeah.
whether you get your degree or not.
Mhm.
So those office hours, your tuition is going towards that. So just use them. Don't be so prideful that you think you know anything or you don't want to ask for help, because if you do that, I think, if I'm not mistaken, if you fail a class 3 times, you can't take it again.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So that's insanity. Go get help. Go
Yeah.
ask for help,
Yeah.
and don't waste your parents' money. Don't waste your grandparents' money. Whoever is helping pay for it, even if you got a scholarship, don't waste the scholarship money.
Yeah.
Like, don't do that. Just remember who, remember what's your motivation. Remember who came before you and the sacrifices they made to get you where you are today. Like, my grandfather had a sixth grade education, worked
Mm.
on railroad for 40 years. So he used to be like, get your lesson done.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that was
Mhm.
that was in the back of my head as well. Like,
Yeah.
you got to get it done. There's like no excuses, you know.
Yeah, my great grandma was the same way, and she would say, "Get your lesson." Like, it wasn't even do your schoolwork; it was get your lesson. So, Dr. Washington, thank you so much for joining me today. This has been an
hmm
insightful conversation. If folks want to just connect with you online, what's the best way for them to do that?
Let's see. I'm only on LinkedIn, so
Okay.
so just look up Maurice Washington on LinkedIn. Actually, it's more than one Maurice Washington,
Okay.
but Maurice Washington, TFE, Trinchero Family Estates, or Ag Engineering. You can look that up, and yeah.
All right.
Oh yeah,
Well,
yeah.
Thank you so much for joining, and thank you all so much for watching. Make sure that you subscribe and share this video with a PhD that you love.